world imitates life, doesn't it? Just look at how the world of cinema has given us some of the best idols of all time. These characters may be the products of creativity and fantasy, but their impact extends deep into the real world. You've given your stamp of approval before, so today the TV Regent is giving you Volume 2 of the top 25 moments when movie characters went God mode. Twenty 2024's only just begun, but we've already gotten some interesting scenes from the world of Hollywood. And no, I'm not talking about naked John Cena at the Oscars. I still don't know who in their right mind would approve that stuff. Anyway, my focus here is on Code 8 Part 2, which has recently hit Netflix screens all over the world. While the film has a relatively straightforward plot and story, there's no denying the impact of Connor Reed, who's a very respectable badass. Take the scene where he and Pav are trying to escape the cops but run into a bunch of Guardians. Of course, we already know what Connor's capable of, so it came as no surprise to see him unleash that electrical surge that took down both his enemies at the same time. It was an instant strike, and even though the scene is just about a few seconds, it hits hard because we're reminded of the destruction this man can cause if you ever try to mess with him. Just looking at his eyes light up like that gives the instant image of an angry god. And if you think about it, Connor's electrokinetic powers are actually good enough to make him the ruler of the Guardians. I know that Godzilla is known as the king of the monsters, but after seeing him blast a hole all the way till the Hollow Earth, I think he should also be called the king of shortcuts. Bro did all of that just to taunt Kong for another fight. I know he loves showing off that atomic breath of his, but this particular scene gave a good idea of how potent the move actually is. I mean, think about it. Godzilla went through mountains and mountains of Earth with just one blast, and on top of that, he continued with his rampage and even fought Kong after that. Of course, the highlight to me was the way he charged himself up before unleashing the blast because it strongly complemented the neon setting in Hong Kong. Just imagine how the humans must have been feeling. They were like, oh, we need to get Kong all the way to Antarctica in order for him to reach the Hollow Earth. And then Godzilla just showed up like, step aside, rookies, let the master show you how it's done. I don't care what anyone says, if this was the atomic blast used against Mecha Godzilla, then I'm sure that fight would have turned out a lot different than it did. Dwayne Johnson has been owning action movies for literal decades, and for good reason too. We've all seen him in films like Black Adam, Hercules and the Fast and Furious franchise, but even if you go all the way back to 2003, you'll find another gem in The Rundown. That shootout sequence towards the end is one heck of a godly turnaround. For a moment of total despair and helplessness, we've got Beck going all guns blazing with a shotgun in each freaking hand. This is always going to be the highlight of the film. It ratchets up the tension to a fever pitch, especially with the onslaught preceding Beck's rampage. Bro knows he has no other choice but to take on the inevitable, and it's such a great turn of events when he accepts his fate and decides to rage against the dying of the light. Only The Rock could pull off something as extravagant as this, and it totally works with the film's tonality. The peak moment is obviously when he has to sit there and rationalize his actions, and the payoff is huge. He takes total control of the situation, and all eyes are on him. You even forget that Stifler is a part of this movie.
To the dust we shall return.
Denzel Washington is the god of action, at least in the eyes of the TV Regent. He showcased his skills on more than one occasion, and his portrayal in the Book of Eli was nothing short of legendary, especially because of the religious angle of the character. Take the bar scene, for example. Bro just violated an annoying weirdo, but that isn't enough of a warning to the other fools in the vicinity. Like, come on guys, when you see a man quoting the Bible and rolling up his sleeves, the best thing you can do is just turn around and run. The whole idea of him carrying out justice on behalf of God himself makes the whole thing much more surreal in nature. It's a chilling moment because Denzel always does this thing where he shows no emotion at all, even when he's fighting multiple people at the same time. It adds to the character's overall personality and speaks volumes of how good an actor he is. From the way he prepares for action to him drawing out his machete and then inflicting all kinds of damage on his opponents was peak filmmaking. You can tell from the stylized cinematography that they really wanted this scene to look epic, and the final output definitely did them justice.
Who cares about Derek Zoolander anyway? What have you done, Derek? nothing! You've done nothing!
One look! I don't think so! I love that kid.
This is probably the closest thing to a Hollywood adaptation of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that we'll ever see. Anyway, 2001 Zoolander may be a comedy film, but that doesn't mean there's nothing godly about it. After all, the Magnum look was enough to save the Prime Minister of Malaysia from Mugatu's fatal Death Star attack. Ben Stiller is a class act, and the way he pulls off that Magnum look is as hilarious as the word can be. Can you blame him though? He was just accused of having one look, which is kind of like blasphemy in the fashion industry. Well, yeah, the Magnum gaze is also pretty much the same as any of his iconic poses, but I guess that's the whole point of the movie, isn't it? Derek Zoolander managed to stop a flying weapon by simply looking at it, so that's definitely got to have some holy connotations. The best part was obviously when everyone thought he did it to save the Prime Minister of Malaysia, but his main intention was to prove the fact that he didn't just have one look. The only thing that was probably missing from this scene was Owen Wilson doing his trademark wow expression.
Oh, Derek, you did it! That was amazing!
I know! I turned left!
Yoda is one of the most iconic characters to have come out of the Star Wars universe, so it only makes sense for him to have a scene or two that cover how powerful he really is. The Star Wars prequel films have been getting more love recently due to how abysmal the newer stuff is, so I'm all for it because it allows me to show how much I genuinely appreciated these movies even when they were first released. Now for this entry, I'm looking at Yoda's fight against Count Dooku, which was pretty badass in itself. The moment when Yoda brought out his lightsaber has to be a picture-perfect moment for the franchise because everyone back then had lost their minds when they saw this scene. It was like God himself had shown his face to his followers. My favourite detail about this scene is that Yoda is such a powerful being with the Force that he doesn't even reach for his lightsaber. He just opens his robe, sticks his hand out and uses the Force to put his weapon in his own hand. Now, as far as the fight's concerned, it could have been a lot more dominant from Yoda if he chose to speak less and attack more, but at least it gave us a shot of him using the Force to save Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker from that giant pillar. This list covers all kind of movie characters, so it doesn't matter if they're heroes, villains, anti-heroes, or bait-and-switch characters. Okay, I know that's a cheap shot, but look, I couldn't help it, okay? We all know how the MCU has inexplicably powered up Wanda Maximoff to the status of a god, when not too long ago, the best she could do was manipulate the fear in people's minds. Now, she's the cause of fear herself, and her attack on Kamar-Taj shows it perfectly. The dominance on display here was nothing short of phenomenal, because you can see how easily she takes down an entire army of sorcerers. One of the coolest things here is how Wanda sees the sorcerers do something and then mimics it perfectly. They shoot her with that magic shell, then she creates her own and shoots them back. They shoot her with magic arrows and she blocks them all and creates enough to take out all the archers. She adapts almost instantly to what they do and she then goes and does it better. She clearly has more power because of the Dark Hold, but I doubt that book taught her all of those skills. Also, are those wimpy sorcerers really the best that Doctor Strange and Wand could raise? A kid's magician could have done better than them.
This girl's gonna get home safe tonight. I'm gonna f you up.
2021's Nobody was exactly the kind of film that was needed to remind Hollywood that such concepts still work because they're actually good. The bus fight scene itself was brutal and probably the most realistic depiction of what would happen when a skilled combatant takes on so many enemies. It may be ironic that Hutch going God mode ended up causing him tons of injuries, but I'd rather take that than an over-dramatic display of power. Sure, it may work in bigger budget productions, but you don't need that over here, which is why the fight has such a lasting impact. I like how Hutch used the first round as a warm-up and then came back even harder after having found his groove. Also, there are so many jokes that can be used here, it's ridiculous. Bro went from Better Call Saul to Better Call a Doctor. Alright, wait, here's one more. Bro went from being a lawyer to needing a lawyer. Well, you don't pay Saul Goodman his fees, this is what's gonna happen to you. Imagine if he actually used a video like this one in his commercials to warn his cheap clients.
Nothing can hurt us as long as we're together.
This was the second highest grossing film of 2023 and probably even made more profit than Barbie because of its significantly lower budget. It's hard to believe that an animated film made so much noise, but the fact remains that it was a smash hit and also had a God mode entry that served as the perfect finale. It's when both Mario and Luigi used the power of brodom to become invincible and take down Bowser in all of 2 business minutes. The formation in itself was pretty cool, but the sequence that followed was the main sell. The part where Bowser tries to kick them both but wasn't able to move either was pretty epic. I actually felt as if I was playing the video game, and the whole thing just felt so much funnier when you consider that it's basically Chris Pratt and Charlie Day fighting against Jack Black. The final kick that sealed the deal was a heck of a display because this version of Bowser is a lot more overpowered than what we've seen anywhere else. All in all, this was a great way to honor the legacy of the game, which is something that Disney would have definitely never been able to do.
Ew, no.
I'll be back.
Imagine what life must have been like in the 80s. You had amazing music, amazing stories, and most importantly, amazing films such as 1984's The Terminator. This movie has cemented itself as an all-time classic, and Arnold Schwarzenegger really settled into his acting era with this role. The assault on the police station is probably the fiercest display of power from the OG Terminator. It starts off with his most iconic line,
I'll be back.
It ends with 17 police officers meeting their ends at the hands of an extremely buff robot. I mean, I may have said this before, but the first Terminator was the scariest of all the Terminator films, and this scene is one of the main reasons why. It was essentially an 80s slasher film with a futuristic sci-fi tone backed by a strong disposition towards action. The luckiest dude over here had to be that psychiatrist who managed to get out of the police station before any damage was actually dealt. The imposing nature of Arnold's build adds to the overall efficiency of the scene because it allows you to buy into the fact that a huge robot is destroying an entire police squad with massive guns in both hands. Man, if I was at that desk, I would have personally handed over Sarah Connor to the big guy.
Not impressed.
By now, you should know that videos like these will always include the God of Steel. I mean the Man of Steel, yeah? Kal-El has proven time and time again why he should have his own religion, although his followers are still fixated on whether their uniforms should have the red trunks or not. Well, trunks or no trunks, it doesn't change the fact that Superman can thrash anyone who stands in his way, and his brutal annihilation of Steppenwolf in Zack Snyder's Justice League gave us a little taste of his true potential. From dominating the likes of Wonder Woman and Aquaman to being treated like a grade C villain, Steppenwolf didn't get the better end of the bargain when Clark Kent decided to show up in all his black suit glory. This violation actually felt as if the Lord himself had shown up to punish those who'd sinned against him. I mean, he doesn't even give his opponent a chance to realize that he's being beaten down by the singular most powerful force in the DCEU. Just look at how he launches those lasers from his eyes to slash off that horde. Bro came back to life and chose violence. You should never mess around with Professor X, otherwise he'll go crazy and obliterate everything in front of his eyes. Actually, I think Wesley is more suited to being one of the 24 personalities that Kevin possesses in Split. Anyway, the point remains that this is a super badass scene and it's probably the closest any human will ever get to being a god. I'll admit that it was extremely over the top, but I don't mind that at all. Just take that eye shot and shield combo. It's so unnecessarily badass that I love it. Also, there's so much gore over here which just adds to the overall intensity of the scene. Take the example of that dollar store Gordon Ramsay. Bro kept shooting through his skull as if he just insulted his cooking. Wesley showcases such a frantic persona that sometimes you even doubt whether he's able to control his own strength. Like, seriously bro, you need to chill out. Even Kratos doesn't lose it to such an extent. 1998's Dark City may not have resonated with the public during its initial release, but it's gone on to become a certified cult classic and has even been praised for its deep themes. Don't believe me? Even The Weeknd used it as an inspiration for his 2022 album Dawn FM. Now, I'm not here to give you a lesson in filmmaking. That stuff doesn't come for free, you know. However, what I can do is praise the final battle between John Murdoch and the leader of the Strangers. It's an intense sequence with both characters using their mind waves to counter each other, and it results in the destruction of a freaking city. Yes, it's more of an alternative space, and there's a lot of allegorical implications to the sequence, but you can't deny how overpowered both the characters are. The effects also hold up for a film that was made around 26 years ago, and the resolution from this battle makes perfect use of the Deus Ex Machina trope. Also, here's some film trivia for you. The producers were so worried that the audience wouldn't understand the film that they actually pushed the director Alex Proyas to add an expositional narration in the intro. It's kind of a no-brainer to have a literal goddess on a god mode video, and no, I don't just mean because of how I treat Gal Gadot like one. Wonder Woman has always got a heavenly vibe to her, but in the case of the No Man's Land scene, I'd say she gave the enemy hell. This scene never fails to amaze me because of the character development on display. It's without a doubt the birth of a hero. This is exactly the moment when Princess Diana takes a decision on her own, and she doesn't care if anyone else is going to support her decision. She's prioritized saving lives, and that's exactly what makes her a true goddess. I also love the way you have the camera focusing on the iconic parts of the Wonder Woman costume as she climbs out of the trench, and no, it's not what you dirty-minded folks are thinking. It's about the gauntlets, the boots, the lasso, the tiara, and then the full body shot as she steps onto the field. It's perfect cinematography, and it carries on when she unleashes her true powers upon the enemy. I'm pretty sure everyone knows how that turned out for those clueless soldiers. Fallen in love with this scene, so I don't care how many times I've got to mention it. The overhead sequence with the dragon breath bullets proved to us that even a successful franchise like John Wick can innovate in its fourth installment. If shooting bullets wasn't enough for bro, he decided to go full Charizard mode and light his enemies on fire as well. Just look at that poor dude who caught fire, then ran into another room hoping to survive, but then got burnt again. It definitely wasn't his day, but I don't care because our man Keanu Reeves was the real G on fire. Unintended. The choreography was on point, and the whole video game vibe certainly felt refreshing. See, this is when you know the team is actually putting in an effort to please the audience. You can make a movie just about the making of this sequence and I'd still watch it. Gunshots, fire, explosions, and even a rampaging dog. He has everything you want in a perfect action sequence. The sheer logistics and coordination that had to happen behind the scenes must have been mind-blowing.
Here.
It's top 10 time, so I'm kicking off with the most powerful being in the pre-DCEU. Imagine being Dr. Manhattan. Basically, you've accidentally become so powerful that you find nothing intriguing or exciting anymore. Sure, he has all these powers. Bro can walk on the surface of the sun and go to places that no human ever could imagine, but he's literally experiencing all of those things alone, and nobody will ever understand him. Nobody can fathom what he's done or been through. And if you think about it, it's kind of depressing, really. I'll tell you what isn't depressing, though, making a goddamn machine in a matter of seconds while meditating on Mars. He definitely has the power of a god, but he's a lonely god, which is why what most consider to be a blessing he thinks is actually a curse. It's definitely an epic moment in the movie, but I think it's the philosophy here that hits harder than anything else. So many people can relate to it, so I feel that the main selling point of the scene is that being almighty isn't necessarily a good thing.
Perhaps the world is not made. Too late.
There's only so much that one scene can do to redeem an otherwise disappointing film, but Jean Grey's decimation of Vuk was good enough to land at number 9 on this list. The final battle really wasn't much to write about, but the way Jean completely turns the tables on Vuk and destroys with the sheer volume of her powers was heartening to watch. Also, that final Phoenix transformation was as godly as it could get. I loved it when Jean triumphantly said, "My emotions make me strong."
My emotions make me strong.
because she's spot on with that statement in real life as well. Jean finally tuned all of her pain into strength and personal healing. Even for an X-Men film that wasn't as good as what we hoped for, this moment does add some context to Jean Grey as a character, which is somewhat missing in the previous films. I also want to bring your attention to how the cosmic explosion was too bright for Magneto, Cyclops, Beast, and Professor X. Now, Storm was the only one who could have properly stared at it since her mutation allowed her to withstand extremely hot temperatures. However, even she has to cover her eyes at first, since the Phoenix surpasses her powers by a country mile.
Your emotions make you weak.
My emotions make me strong.
This film is dedicated to the thousands of celery stalks that lost their lives in the making of this scene's sound design. Never forget. On a more serious note, this is as deadly as I've ever seen Tony Jaa, and this is including the Ong Bak series. I mean, I don't blame him though. He did just realise that he'd lost his elephant. I guess it's like the saying goes, an eye for an eye, a bone for a bone. Well, in this case, a lot of bones. I mean, just imagine what must have been going on inside the minds of the dudes who were only just running into the room. They're seeing like 20 men on the floor with broken bones, so I'm not sure they would have been very confident about their chances of winning. Man, if I was one of those men, I'd probably run around to the other side and fall on the ground holding either of my arms or leg in pain, praying he doesn't notice me. See, this should have served as a warning to goons everywhere. If you're not supposed to mess with Tony Jaa's elephant, then you sure as heck shouldn't do the same with John Wick's dog. When all the stakes are down and you're all but ready to bite the dust, all you need is a little puckering up from your crush and you achieve God status. No, seriously, in the case of Neo in The Matrix, one kiss is all it takes. No, I'm not referring to the Dua Lipa song, although I'm pretty sure she's the one for me. Okay, enough of simping. The point of this entry is that Neo goes from completely clueless and almost ended to total badass. Him blocking Agent Smith with one hand while not looking was pure disrespect, and I loved every moment of it. Just imagine you and your buddies watching a guy come back to life after finishing him off. You'll shoot him a bunch of times and all the bullets stop mid-air with force. Then you go up to fight him hand to hand, and even though just a few minutes ago you were pretty much evenly matched, he effortlessly wrecks you without even looking and kicks you across the hallway. Smith's terrified expression and little stutter step back was a clear indication that he's no longer confident he can win. Now that's a better comeback story than Jesus. Nobody was looking forward to seeing Captain Marvel back in the MCU, but the Russo brothers played it smart and only allowed her to make an appearance when the stakes really needed her to show up. The sudden arrival and complete demolition of Thanos' ship proved to be the equivalent of being saved by the Lord. It's a short sequence that gets the job done and also showcases Captain Marvel's power potential. I mean, if you had it right from the start, then I'm sure the battle time would have gone down considerably. Either way, it was an apt way to involve the character, and the powers on display were simply too good to keep out of my top 10. We all know how powerful the leader of the Autobots is, but the rage sequence in Transformers Dark of the Moon was a whole other vibe. Watching this made me feel that Optimus Prime could have been a better Decepticon than Megatron. Just look at him going through all those opponents in a flash. Bro was operating as if he was level 100 and restarting the game from scratch. This is by far the most dominant he's ever been in the franchise, and I'm sure he made all the Decepticons piss their pants after showing off what he can do when he's mad. Heck, even Sentinel Prime probably wouldn't have been able to stop his rampage if he was down there too. This is one of those few occasions when the size of your opposition enhances your own appearance. Odesu may have been a lone wolf in Oldboy's hallway fight scene, but he did manage to bring out his best performance and also present himself as a larger-than-life character. The number of blows he had to take meant nothing as long as he could get out of this mess alive, and that's exactly what he managed to do. This is despite the other men strategically planning their moves on him and even going at him at the same time. If this isn't the wrath of a fighting god, then I don't know what is. You can call me as simple all you want, but even Superman falls under that category. He proves it in his OG film when he reverses time to bring Lois Lane back to life. Bro couldn't deal with the loss of his bait, so we decided to change the rules of the game. It is cheating for sure, but if you have the power of a god, then no one's ever going to question your methods, are they? Even the anger and resentment on Clark Kent's face over here showed how much Lois really meant to him, and I've got to give props to the effects team for being able to pull off something believable, especially all those years ago. If you thought Leonidas leading 300 men to defeat thousands of Persians was badass, then think again. Enter the crazy samurai Masashi, who takes on a ridiculously 400 men all by himself. Now, if this isn't God mode, then nothing is. I don't even know how such a thing is possible, but they made a movie on it, so it qualifies. I can talk about how intense the production must have been to make this a reality, but what I think is more impressive is that the fight is actually an edited cut of 77 minutes. Yep, the trailer had more cuts than the actual movie. It's not too often that you hear someone saying that, eh? The director must have been like, the only acceptable cuts will come from the hero's sword. I've already spoken about Superman with his time reversal, but the one shown here had a lot more going on than just a sim trying to bring his crush back to life. That's exactly why it lands the top spot on this list. Man, I'd do anything if I had this kind of power. Do you know how many mistakes I could have avoided? Personal agendas aside, the Flash is one of the few superheroes who can turn back time at will, and we get to see it firsthand in Zack Snyder's Justice League. The finale of this film was so different from the 2017 theatrical cut that it made me wonder what exactly was going on with the execs of Warner Brothers at the time. Like, you chose to omit a whole time reversal sequence? That's kind of like blasphemy in the comic book world. The fact that Barry Allen was able to undo the annihilation of the whole world speaks volumes of his capabilities and also serves as a redeeming quality of the character, considering how the actor playing him just keeps racking up the L's. If only he could turn back time in real life too, eh? Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.